Aquaba, welcome back. If you are just joining us, I am talking about theft and reparations. Some background history. Grand theft and larceny was committed by European oppressors in pursuit of the first international business, also known as enslavement. Following the end of slavery, 13 European countries gave themselves permission and power to carve up the continent and wholesale steal the land, its riches and people as their prerogative. The Berlin Conference of 1884 was attended by the leading imperialists: England, Germany, France, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. They had deemed themselves superior to all other peoples and went about the business of dividing the continent for their economic benefit with absolutely no regard to African people. Some of the land boundaries drawn then are still a source of conflict among African ethnic groups today. African liberation from colonization did not deter the West from imposing their will on former colonies to continue economic exploitation. The history is littered with serious consequences for those African leaders who refused to comply. Sabotage of duly elected African leaders included exile and assassination. Nkrumah was exiled. Lumumba and Sankara assassinated. And a host of leaders were made ineffective and subject to Western-backed coup attempts, even as they courageously tried to forge a new path for their people. This situation is still problematic for African people today, impeding true self-determination, independence, and governance based on the will and vision of African people. Need an example? You know I have not one, but two. On the continent, secondhand clothing exported by the United States is a multi-billion-dollar industry worth upwards of $28 billion in 2019 and is expected to triple by 2029, according to Forbes magazine. African countries receiving significant amounts of America's used clothes strangled what was once vibrant textile industries across the continent, employing millions. The indigenous textile industries of Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and others nearly collapsed under the weight of marketing Western fashion and the cheapness of used clothes like jeans. The East African Community Organization, or EAC, decided to change this situation, giving the U.S. a 2-year notice of their intention to either ban exported secondhand clothing or impose stiff tariffs to discourage its importation. For Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Tanzania, the problem was serious. Kenya saw its workforce of 500,000 textile workers reduced to a few thousand, as African clothiers couldn't compete with the inexpensive used frocks. The mutual goal of these countries was to reinvigorate their own textile industries to generate hundreds of thousands of jobs for their own people. When the U.S. Secondary Materials and Recycled Textiles Association received the news, the organization was highly offended. It petitioned the Trump-led government to suspend duty-free status to the EAC under the African Growth and Opportunities Act, known as AGOA. According to them, phasing out used clothing in Africa would result in, and I quote, significant economic hardship to the multi-billion-dollar industry. In 2017, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda were threatened to be removed from AGOA. Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania capitulated and withdrew promised bans and tariffs. Rwandan's President Paul Kagame met with Trump at an attempt to compromise, with no success. Since Rwanda was less vested in AGOA, it went forward with the ban in 2018 and has increased its textile manufacturing from less than 10 companies to 70. However, because of various economic challenges, including the pandemic, the ban has received mixed reviews by Rwanda's poorest people. On this side of the Atlantic, in 2021, Prime Minister Mia Mottley announced a new status for Barbados, a British colony for nearly 400 years. Becoming a republic, Queen Elizabeth was removed as head of state. The change was not a rash decision, having been contemplated since 1979 and reconsidered in 1998 and 2004. During her throne speech in 2020, Prime Minister Mottley said it was time for a Republican form of government, and in 2021 stated emphatically that Barbados must claim its full destiny. In terms of consensus, a third of Barbadians cheered the new status, a third were indifferent, and a third wanted to keep the constitutional monarchy. Barbadian poet Winston Farrell spoke at the ceremony and articulated a feeling deeply rooted not only in Barbados, but in other former British colonies. He poeted with passion. Full stop this colonial page. Some have grown up stupid under the Union Jack, lost in the castle of their skin. It is about us rising out of the cane fields, reclaiming our history, and all that she meant, and put a Bajan there instead. Well, alas, these situations and our ambivalence about what needs to be done and the tough decisions to be implemented often keeps our people from doing what is in our own best interests. It is a gnarly conundrum with economic consequences that too many of our people must deal with. We'll be right back.